I'm Ted Shoemaker. I retired from Boeing in 1999, and I decided I wanted to work on refurbishing of planes. And I went over to the Museum of Flight, and they put me on the B-29. Dale Nicholson was the guy in charge, and he said, "Ted, I'd like you to put in new cables into the cockpit." Well, I'd never done that before, but I said, okay. That was my marching orders, and that's what I did. And I got with a guy named Tom Rowley, and the two of us, we started with the control column right here, hooking it up down below to wherever it went, through the pulleys and things, and we had to clean all those things, make sure they worked, and et cetera, et cetera. Then once we finished that one, we went over to the co-pilot and put the column in over there. And then we proceeded to hook up to all the other controls in the airplane, from here to the back in the back are all the engine controls and other controls back there. All of it went to back under the pressure wall. We hooked them up back there, put clamps on, and put a tag as to where it went. It took us probably about 3 or 4 years to do all that. Well, when I was a little kid, I built model airplanes, and when I always wanted to work for Boeing. But when I got out of college with a mechanical engineering degree, Boeing wasn't hiring, and I wound up at PACCAR for 24 years, and then finally came to Boeing and worked here on the B-1 bomber. And then when I finished 12 years there, retired from Boeing, came over here and worked on the B-29. I got started on it, and boy, I tell you, it really grabs a hold of you, and it's hard, dirty work. It takes forever. But you take it one pulley at a time, and you clean up that pulley, run the cable around it, and make sure it's right. And if the bracket is all done, it was all corroded, you built new ones. And you just went on from there, and you worked from here clear to the tail end of the airplane. Okay, one thing about this airplane that's impressive is the complexity of it. And it was driven entirely by control cables that went out to control surfaces, out to the engines, to various other pumps and things that had to be activated. And everything controlled by a cable. And all those cables came into this cockpit, and a lot of them are buried underneath the floor. What impresses me about the B-29 is the complexity of the thing. I cannot believe that those Boeing engineers in that period of time during World War II were able to make this airplane, which is a big advancement over the B-17, which is Boeing's previous airplane. And it's just unbelievable if they did that.
Hi, my name's Dale Smith. I've been working on the B-29 for over 10 years. One day a light bulb came on and I decided to build a proper, sturdy, permanently mounted ladder, and started rough sketches and coordinating with Dale Thompson, and finally this is what we ended up with. During World War II, the crews had a small vertical ladder located in this area, utilizing these hooks and these red handholds to climb up, which for wartime situation, that worked just fine, but for us older gentlemen maintaining the airplane, we needed a safer, sturdier, angled ladder to enter and exit the airplane frequently. This is not a ladder that one could go to a hardware store and buy. We had to fabricate it to the dimensions of the space we had in the airplane to put it. I started with two 8-foot 2x4s and cut them at an angle, shorten them to the exact length so that we'd have the correct angle, so we'd have a safe ladder, and then had to notch this at each step to make it a good solid fit, and a lot of angles, a lot of head scratching to get it all done right. This simple ladder, sturdy and strong and safe, it has helped us restoration people get some rather large and heavy items up into the airplane much easier. And last September, a 94-year-old co-pilot that flew this airplane in World War II for 5 missions, his family brought him over, and probably due to the safety and the sturdiness of this ladder, we were able to get him up into the cockpit, and he sat in the co-pilot seat and reminisced and thoroughly enjoyed it. And it's things like that that make our volunteering all worthwhile. Hi, I'm Scott Taylor. I am a volunteer with the Museum of Flight. My background is I am an aviation mechanic, and I was a flight engineer with the United States Air Force Reserve. I have an airframe and power plant maintenance certificate, and I joined the Museum of Flight in 2009 and started working on the B-29 project. I got interested in World War II history, especially aviation, because it was just something fun to do. I at one time was building plastic models, and they're interesting to do, but they just collect dust on a shelf someplace. Now, 1-to-1 scale airplanes like the B-29 here, it's a lot more intricate, a lot more interesting to work on. What I am standing next to here, this is a turbocharger from the B-29. The B-29 had actually 8 of them, or 2 per engine. What it did is it pressurized the air going into the carburetor for high altitude flying. When I got it, couldn't even tell. It was kind of a brownish black and full of oil and grease and everything else that you could imagine. And so I cleaned it, disassembled the whole unit and cleaned it up and made it presentable. This is a R3350 engine, 3,350 cubic inches, about 3,000 horsepower. What we see here is what I worked on. This is what they call the prop hub. Actually, there's on each one of these, there would be a 18-foot propeller blade sticking off the end of it. This is the hub here, with the reversing device. So when they land, they can actually reverse the propeller blades, and it helps slow down the airplane. And so I restored this section on the forward part of the engine here. Well, I had to to restore it, I had to sandblast this hub. I had to polish the spinner hub here, repaint it, so it looked decent for public display. I'm having a great time in retirement. This is a lot of fun, and the airplane is starting to look more like a good presentation for the public. And we, if the public asks us questions about this particular airplane, we're able to answer them with some knowledge. Even though we were, none of us were involved in the B-29 during the war.
My name is Dale Thompson. I've been working on the restoration of the B-29 since about 2002, when a friend of mine told me I ought to come down and talk to the then crew chief and see if they had anything for me to do. He basically hired me and put me to work doing restoration of the wiring within the airplane. We had previously, people had to remove most of the old wiring, virtually all of the old wiring out of the airplane, because it was in very deteriorated condition. So I started doing some of the fine wiring bundles that needed to be put in to connect virtually everything radio or electronic in the airplane. I didn't do it all, others were working on it also, but I put a lot of it in. Then the subject came up of radios, and working with a couple of the other guys, we attacked the radios in the plane. We were lucky enough to have quite a few available that could be cleaned up, polished up, and actually made to work again. And in fact, as far as making them to work again, one example is right here with the what we call the command sets, which were plane to plane, plane to ground sets. And we got them up working, and we could legally put them on the amateur radio band, and we actually talked between this airplane and the B-17, whose radios also had been restored. That was kind of fun to do. Then one of the crew chiefs said, what about the turret system on this airplane? We've got a lot of the parts lying around. Could we possibly get one of the turrets working? Well, that took 2 or 3 of us working a long time to do that. We had to redesign and start from scratch on the control system boxes because we couldn't find any. We got one working. And then the reply was, well, you got one working, how about 2? Well, this went on to where we got all 5 of them on the airplane working. We were lucky enough to have a 3rd turret that actually came to us from Britain, and we got it working, and it is now outside the airplane and will be used when we have a good covered area in here to display it. What impresses me about the B-29 is how advanced it was in the world of airplanes. It was such a move forward, for instance, technological-wise, aeronautical in all forms, from the B-17 and virtually every other bomber in the Second World War. It being the only bomber that was pressurized and heated was very impressive to me. As I have continued to work on its restoration, then I've learned a lot more about it that I certainly didn't know before I came to work on it, and it has further impressed me, and it's a further reason to restore it as a famous artifact. Also, the fact that there really aren't very many of these that were saved. Out of 4,000 built, we're down to maybe 25 in somewhat reasonable shape. And we need to save at least one all the way back to a 1945 configuration, and not fly it, not upgrade it to flying, but have it a snapshot in time. One of the ways we've been able to do this is having a full set of Boeing drawings, and we have followed those so that we know we're putting things back the way they were rather than maybe the way it would be done today if it were being built today. When I'm in this airplane, when I think about the guys who flew it, I think about the conditions under which they were operating. It's kind of fantastic to think of these people leaving on these missions, going out for 8 hours before they could even drop the bombs and come back. And the excitement they had when they were allowed to take this duty, which was always done only by volunteers. Restoration is important to me because these are very important pieces of history. The B-29 has been a favorite of mine from the time I was a little kid. It was actually the first airplane model that I built was a B-29. I've been interested in them ever since, and when this came along as an opportunity, I really was pleased to be able to be part of the team.
My name is Larry Tietz. I've been a volunteer since 2000. I signed on mainly to work on the remote control turret systems on the B-29. When I was a senior in college, I took a servo mechanisms course, and the entire lab, which lasted a semester, was the analyzing of the B-29 gun turret control system. So I was interested in getting it up and running on the B-29. Now, these are 50 caliber machine guns. There was another caliber that was used on some of the other aircraft at the time. They were 30 caliber, but these pack a lot more punch. This is the upper forward turret on the B-29. There's another turret directly below it. Both of these turrets are controlled by the bombardier. When the plane was originally designed, this turret only had 2 guns, but they found that in a head-on attack with a fighter, that wasn't enough. So they changed the upper turret to a 4-gun turret to provide more firepower for a head-on attack. This is the other part of the remote control turret system. This is the gun sight. Every gunner in the plane, all 5 gunners, had something similar to this. It moves in azimuth, it moves in elevation. The gunner looks through the gun sight here. He sees a circle of dots. He keeps those centered on the airplane. He tracks it, and as he tracks it, these gyroscopes feed that information into the computer, and the computer calculates lead for the turret so that when the gun fires, the bullet intersects the target. Now, this was very innovative at the time. It has a lot of functions that before the gunner who was with the gun did. When you think about it, B-17, the gunner is tracking the target, but he has to add lead himself from his head. A few other things. This has a computer that was built by Singer Sewing Machine Company, designed by IBM, that interfaces between the gun sight and the turret and corrects for a bunch of things like lead, ballistics. Then you have another feature. When you look through the gun sight here, you see a circle of red dots, yellow dots. And this dial, there's a dial at the top that has feet in it. This dial here, you turn that, it moves the feet around. That's supposed to be the wingspan of the incoming aircraft. And then this wheel over here, you turn it, the dots collapse and expand. You keep the dots on the wingtips of the aircraft. That allows the computer to figure out the range of the aircraft, which helps a lot because the gyroscopes here, as he's doing very smooth movements, allows the computer to compute the speed of the aircraft given the range, and that then works into a lead calculation for the firing of the bullet. I was interested in restoration mainly because I wanted to get the remote control gun system up and running on the B-29. You might say I was an aviation buff, but I don't have all that passion. I'm more of an engineering control systems buff, and I'd like to see the things function as well as they can.